welcome to the Black Tower. I am the Sorcerer, and today, Coffee with the Sorcerer. Let's introduce all of y'all to a very special guest of mine, somebody I have utmost respect in our cult community, Mr. Dan Updike. Dan, how you been?
I've been doing good. Thanks for having me on.
Anytime, man. Ever since I think it's been a bit better than a year since I saw you start to do your own thing on YouTube and doing your videos and things, and I was impressed at it. And you doing your Northern Runes radio station, all these different projects you were involved in. There any that are your particular favorites? I mean, do you have like one? Do you have like one you're particular about that you really like?
Well, I kind of enjoy what I'm doing right now, but from the old NRR days, I think the favorite project that I had in all of that was a series of 29 broadcasts that were done called the Runic series. And that was the most challenging one that I did with my then on-air partner, because we did it in 4 different runic futharks. So the Elder Futhark, which everybody has heard of usually, the Anglo-Saxon Futhark, the Younger Futhark, and the Armanen. And we went through all of the lore for each one, and an extra episode was put in there if there was a rune that wasn't found in the other ones. And yeah, those were between an hour and an hour and a half each, those broadcasts, and they're still around. We have them up on our digital downloads, but that was my favorite from that time. But what I'm doing right now with the Dan podcast is trying to get the message out to people about what real occultism really is. Not all the flashy stuff, because I know there's a lot of other people that put some good stuff out there too, and some of them have a higher budget than I do when it comes to what they could put out there. But I was never interested. I might put some things out in the future a little bit, but I was never interested in being flashy. I was more interested in just trying to get to the root of the matter so that people could actually understand what they were doing. Because, if you understand what you're doing, you have a better grasp of why you would do it. And this would bring about something that would actually help you, rather than just be impressive. You know what I'm saying. Like, oh, look, I was able to do this. No. But if you're actually able to become something more than what you were, because that was a tagline in the old NRR, that's not changed in my focus. It needs to be something that's actually going to help. And so that's the focus of what I do, and try to help awaken people to that, so that they get to know who they really are, not who other people, society, educational and religious institutions, whatever, have told them that they are. Because there's always somebody that will tell you what you cannot do, what you cannot have, how you should be, in their opinion. But few people actually sit down and, with truth and honesty, ask themselves, who am I? What do I want? How am I going to fulfill my will in this earth? And I'm not talking about what people have told you your will is. That could be anything. The car salesman might want you to have that Lamborghini, and maybe you do too, but maybe you want something else. And but the thing is why? What makes you feel fulfilled as a person? That's really what it comes down to. Really fulfilled. And you only get that if you get to know who you really are. And then the other aspects of how you fit into your family, how you fit into society, that all takes care of itself, because you're whole as a person. Because what do you have if you have a bunch of broken pieces put together? A mess, right?
Yes.
But if they're all...
puzzle.
Go ahead.
Or one hell of a jigsaw puzzle.
Yep. Yeah. But when it's all whole, when the pieces, the individual pieces are whole, and it all goes together, it all works together. You know, I don't know about you, but when something's not working right in the engine of my car, I get kind of upset, especially if it happens when I'm out on the road somewhere. But when everything is whole, when everything is actually doing its will, for lack of a better analogy, the engine purrs like a kitten. Everything goes. You have good gas mileage. You get where you're going. And the same thing happens with the collective aspect of society and of people and families, and with the different aspects of ourselves individually too. When we're whole, we flow, we expand, we become. And when we're not, we don't.
Yeah.
Because we're bound up.
You know, and I think this is so interesting. I've been doing this for a while, and every couple of years or so, I have to stop, and I'll immediately I feel like everything's off. Like my internal world, my external world are just a little bit out of sync. And this will go on for a few days, and all of a sudden I'll realize that I'm changing, that I've reached that crossroads, and that what I need to do is realign, recenter, and I have to sit there and I'll be like, what do you believe, Waylon? What is it that you believe right now? Not what did you used to believe? What do you believe now? Mm-hmm. What do you truly desire? What do you truly want? What can you do? And I will sit there and I will consciously come up with this and I'll write it down and I'll let it go. Because then it goes to the subconscious. And then it starts to work its way into my psyche until it's built, until it's programmed. Because our minds, I don't think some of us realize that our minds put shit together for us. But we have to put the information in. We have to be like, I want this, I want this, I want this. And that to me is a lot of what like sigil work is all about. It's about telling your mind, hey, I want this. And this is the symbol that's going to be the program trigger. Mm-hmm. Would you agree with that? And also, if you agree, disagree, whatever, what are your thoughts about as far as having to come back to yourself ever so often?
Well, I would agree with both of those things, actually. Talking about the last thing you were speaking of first, you need to be purposeful but fluid. Yep. In other words, when even your body, every 7 years or so, has replaced every cell, and so technically, physically speaking, you're a brand new man. If that happens just on the physical plane, why would we think that we become immutable on all the other subtle planes? Things progress, things evolve, things change, and we need to be able to be fluid enough to move with that. Because what was good for us a year ago, or even a month ago, may not be what's good for us today. And so we have to be in touch with ourselves on a regular basis, and having a good, strong daily practice is a really good way to help with that, because then you're always in touch. And the other aspect of things with sigil work, yeah, you hit the nail right on the head with that, because when you make a sigil, whether it's a freehand sigil, that you just created yourself, perhaps it's a sigil of an entity that came out of a grimoire, it doesn't matter. You see, when that sigil is looked upon, it is no longer just a bunch of words, it's a symbol. And the symbol, you can even forget in your conscious mind what it means. Your subconscious mind doesn't. And you can allow that to sink into your deeper mind, and it will activate. And that's, something to also bear in mind if you happen to be dabbling in something that you ought not to be. By that I mean, you're not really committed to the process and you're just looking at different sigils and so forth. Some of those sigils have real power, and you don't want to just be sitting there flippantly going through them. And the runes are another prime example of that. In some way that I cannot explain, they are self-aware, and you do not want to be flippant with them. You treat them with respect. And you do that because there's a reaction that happens in the subconscious aspect of our mind. And we can do things to bring forth what's going to help build us up, or we can shoot ourselves in the foot by not really taking it seriously, because our subconscious mind doesn't know the difference. Our conscious mind might be going ha ha ha, but our subconscious mind isn't doing that, and it'll create according to its process, one way or another. But yeah, I hope that answers your question. But that's something I was just thinking about when you were mentioning these things earlier.
I hate it when you start talking because it's like your videos. I swear, I think that if you just kept talking, I could just fall asleep listening to it. Not because it puts me to sleep, but because I'm sitting there going, hell yeah, that's the truth, and that's how you work with it. So but I don't really mean fall asleep with it. I didn't mean it like that. I'm just saying you're not putting me. I just I love intelligent people because for some reason they're not talking out their ass. They're not just they're not armchair theorists. They're seasoned practitioners who are sitting there and honestly giving you what I guess what they would refer to as the meat and potatoes versus the milk stage. And speaking of the milk stage, you and I, we've communicated back and forth on Facebook for a little while. Not much and not often, but ever so often. And one of the very first things that I remember telling you, how glad I am that there's someone like you in our community because you have the patience, the knowledge, and the wisdom to teach up and coming practitioners of any path. I lack that kind of patience to teach beginners and stuff like that. I'm more one of those guys that I can sit there and have a conversation with anybody, and I may even be able to sit there and give some advice. But to do this day in and day out, I'd be like, wow, holy crap! Read a book, do some meditation, something, and I wouldn't be mean about it. But I would just be like, you only are going to get out of this what you put into this. But it's people like you that have the patience for that. How have you managed to maintain the patience with that?
Oh, I honestly don't know. Are there times that I get frustrated? Oh, absolutely. Especially when you see the results, and it's what you told people was going to happen, but it's there. How come this happened? Um, excuse me. But then again, I had the situation where, of course, I was raised in such a strict and stringent household. My brother laughed and said, we were raised in a prison camp. And in some ways we were. I was the son of an evangelical Pentecostal preacher. And, so everything we did was wrong.
Wow,
But
seriously?
oh yeah, it was brutal. Um, Very much, the scripture quoted too, spare the rod and spoil the child. And they were sure as heck not going to try and spoil me. So,
Oh
but
wow,
but the thing is, though, is that I looked at that, and
the discipline.
the discipline that was involved with it, and I realized, okay, because I wasn't always very patient, believe me. But there came a time where my wife actually said to me, and this is 20 years ago, uh, not everybody was raised like you.
My
Not
wife says
everybody,
that.
not everybody got drilled like you got drilled, and you had to do these things to survive. And you know, a lot of people, they just don't have that context, and so you got to give them a break. Don't be easy on them, but give them a break to realize that they didn't get that type of training. And so I have to stop, take a breath, and realize, okay, they're getting their training now with this particular situation. So when I bring this up again, a little bit less likely that they'll go that direction again. And they'll take that a little bit more seriously. And it's not that they're going to go and do everything the way I told them to do it. I'm not there to tell people how to live or how their practice should be, but basically to show signposts so they can discover for themselves. But they've got to be honest with themselves in order to effectively do that. And so that's what I try to help show them so that they can do that. And we learn by mistakes.
Yeah.
And I just hope sometimes, and I like, please don't make that mistake. I did that one. Please don't do that.
Wow.
And sometimes they do. But other times, as a result of making those mistakes, they've learned all that much more, and they're far more effective when they carry on. And so I've looked and I've seen, the bad results of people that have actually, just gone off and forsaken everything because they wouldn't get the point. And other people where it was really gratifying to see how all of a sudden they started really making changes in their life. And look, you don't need me to point the signs out anymore.
Yeah, you've got this.
Congratulations. Now you can help me.
Yeah.
My seat keeps sinking. That's why I move every now and again.
That's fine. Oh, my high back leather chair here, it has the same thing for some reason. I guess because it's old, it tries to do like this, and then I'll have to shift it. So I get that. No, I think that's very interesting. I've been married for 15 years now, and I'm married to a witch.
Mm-hmm.
And we met in an occult shop, occult store, whatever you want to call it. And I was probably I was doing past lives, tarot readings, aura readings. I mean, you name it, I did it, and I was more or less doing it to help people. I really didn't care about money or anything like that, because literally, I don't know how many times I told people, "Hey, man, you buy me a pack of cigarettes or give me a cup of coffee next time, we're clear." And that's what I did, and I did this forever. Well, it did a few things. It taught me to be humble as my power was developing, and as I was becoming stronger, it kept me humble. It kept, and also in the role of a high priest, which is different than a priest. A priest serves the gods. A high priest serves the people in relation to the gods. And so, at any rate, the way I was raised was much the same way. Spare not the rod. Oh, wow. We were raised by the hair of our head, and we were taught flashcards. And you literally had 3 seconds to see the card, give the answer, or ran right upside the head. I'm dead serious. And so it developed a form of just cognitive ability to just be able to spot, react. And I brought up all this because when me and my wife, when we first got together and everything else, and she was like, for you to be so intelligent, so smart, and be able to understand all these systems and stuff, how are you not mean? And I'm like, because I'll bleed just as well as anybody else will. I came into this world naked, I'll go out of this world naked. There's no difference in us. I don't, outside of names and race and all this other stuff, there's no difference. And as I introduced her to my world of me teaching others, because I did the face-to-face teaching, because this whole electronic thing is completely new to me. But anyway, and there would be times when I'd just be like, holy crap, did they not read the exact same book I read? What's going on? And my wife would be like, and that's when she'd step in and she goes, oh, you're being an asshole. She says, not everybody's you, babe. Not everybody catches like you. And now, mind you, this was 14 years ago when she started this, and to this day, she may be my cheerleader, but she's the first one to tell me quit being an asshole. And that's why I asked you about this. How have you managed to maintain being able to keep doing it?
I can relate. But you know what? It's good that way, because I think it's the same between you and I here in relation to our significant others, that we know where we stand with them. Yeah. And they're honest enough to tell us the truth, even if it isn't nice.
Yeah, I'm telling you, and I appreciate you sharing something that personal here, because there's a lot of people when they do stuff like this, they like to put on the facade, on the mask. Like I have the sorcerer arm on a tool. I do this in ritual and in my own day-to-day life. I get on here and I introduce myself because it's an archetype of myself that I'm presenting. But then you get Waylon, you get the real person behind that mask, and that's what I emulate in real life. But the thing is that most of the time when you run across, interviews or you talk to people's videos and stuff, they always pretend to be something like that. That's what's going to sell their product. That's what's going to be their sell their service. And the one thing that just made me mad, just have mad respect for you, was the fact that every week you got on there, I'm Dan Updike, and this is the Damned Podcast. And I was just like, holy crap. And that's where I got the formula for how I would introduce my own channel, was by watching the way you were just you. Because up until I'd seen that, I really had no idea how would I introduce myself to my own channel. So I want to say thank you for showing how to be real and how to actually present truth.
Well, I'm honored that you would say that, Waylon. I guess I've seen enough, and when I grew up in my experience with the church too, I got front row seats to some of the greatest scenes of hypocrisy that you could ever see in your life. Um, I just always swore, even from the time I was a little kid, that would never be me. Because I looked at that and I would see it happen, because I'd see these people when they were being themselves. And then as soon as somebody else that they didn't know walked into the room, even their voice changed. They were a totally different person. And they began to speak with, come on. And people from Saskatchewan talking with a Texas accent, and you've probably never been there.
Yeah.
Of course, from Canada, Saskatchewan's the next province over. And, I'd be laughing at these things. But, I always said, if you can't be yourself, and you can't use your own name, you know, maybe you shouldn't be saying that. If you're not going to be who you are, then what honesty can you actually even have with yourself?
Yeah.
Because you have to put on a facade. But you know what? Here's the thing that I just want to throw out there, is that a lot of times, and this is the sad thing, because of the programming that we've all been subjected to, some people, a lot of people, put on a facade even to themselves. And it's because they're afraid of what they'll find when they look at who they really are.
Or what others will think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But there's nothing to be afraid of with any of that. Sure, there's a lot of things that we face about ourselves, and you know this as well as I do, that don't necessarily like, and we've got to change, and we've got to deal with strengths and weaknesses and different things that are that need to be worked on.
Yeah.
But when we're honest with ourselves, we can actually do something about it.
Yeah.
But if we're hiding from ourselves and hiding from others too, then that just stays there. Yeah. And festers and gets worse. And I sometimes wonder, is that why some people that, when they get well advanced in years, are such bitter and twisted old coots? I mean, is it because they left that fester for so long?
Yeah. I've wondered that sometimes too. One of the things on my channel that I say, and in some of my videos, if you can't be honest with anybody or anything, be honest with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I use that as a template, not just as a template, but that it's not necessarily just how I live my life, but it is a solid foundational tool that would help anybody. Mm-hmm. Just if you can't be honest with anybody, at least be honest with yourself, because it always starts small. And if you'll start with something small, even if you know you have to be fake or pretentious around the world around you, at least don't be fake or pretentious to yourself when you're looking in a mirror.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a thought I wanted to go into with you concerning, okay, in this present day and age, and we talk about this awakening that is happening, and I know that there are people who say, oh, this has been happening for the last 50, 60, 70 years, whatever. Some have even equated it to the Aquarius, the Aquarian age and all this, that, and the other, and I really don't care about all that. I'm not getting into that aspect of it. But the part that I would really like to discuss with you is a part of this awakening that seems to be truly happening. Everything from all these old deities just all of a sudden hitting the surface and just hitting the mainstreams and all the stuff that's going on. These people are awakening. What is happening to their psyche and what's going on and who's there to catch them and who's there to be the voice of reason?
Hmm, that's a good one. Uh, I think there's more than this, but in general, there's three segments of people that's going on uh, amongst themselves in this awakening process. And there is an awakening process happening. The process is not nearly as far along as what folks would say in some videos that you'll see on the internet, but it is happening. But you have the first group, which are people that turn tail and run. And they just horn themselves right in, like people that are on a bus, but they won't get off the bus. They hang on to the pole by the back door, like if you're thinking of a transit bus saying, no, 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 but it keeps on going. They are going to end up arriving at some point in time, kicking and screaming the whole way. And you see this a lot with a lot of groups that are getting up, making videos, making broadcasts, talking, writing books about how the good old days need to come back. And, you know, they extol how virtuous those times were and how depraved the time we live in is. And what they forget is that things were just as depraved as they were then as they are now. Just you didn't hear about it. You know, people, you know, one epoch of society is no better or worse than another. They're all filled with good and bad. And then you have the second group of people, which are people that are embracing this and are actually growing and becoming something. And by becoming something, I mean they're aligning more with the purpose that fulfills them in their life. And they're starting to realize that there's a lot more out there than all the things that they were taught, that the paradigm that has ruled over the earth for the last 2,000 years or so no longer holds the same power. And in fact, it is passing away. It'll be a long time before it actually is fully passed away, but it is in that process. And that there is a whole new open vista ahead of them, and the limitations that they have allowed into their lives don't really need to be there. And, you know, they're starting to slowly get to the place where, you know, oh, they can grow this way and they can grow that way. They can understand this. The lessons that the old gods had and the old goddesses actually have relevance today, too. And you know what? There's new ones, too, that we can draw from. We're not bound in the same way that, you know, society seemed to embrace before. And then you have the final group of people. And you and I, when we were talking off air, you kind of hit on this, and that's that group of people that are getting affected very, very profoundly, almost as profoundly as the people that are embracing this, but they don't have the context psychologically to deal with it. And these people become the wingnuts. They go spinning out of control, taking something that has a seed of truth in it and blowing it so far out of proportion that not only is it a lie, but it really brings meaning to the statement. A little bit of knowledge is a dangerous thing. You know, they go and take this and end up destroying themselves and other people. And, you know, so I guess the question is, when you analyze yourself truthfully, you know, you ask yourself the question, well, which one of these groups do I fall in most? And sometimes we're not all in one group or all in another, but maybe varying degrees of all three. And how do we get into that place where we're not spinning out of psychological control? And how do we get out of the place where we're sticking our feet in the sand and being detrimental to our own growth? How do we balance that out? And, you know, being honest about that, and a voice of reason. I think there's lots of voices of reason out there, but you got to really watch, because you know what? Anybody that goes out there, I've said this before, that says they've got all the answers to everything, run the other way as fast as you can, because they don't even know what the questions are. All right. It's people that have that attitude of humility, and by that I'm not saying don't take pride in yourself, but I mean, you're not arrogant. You're not sitting there saying, I know more than everybody else. Because you know what? We could all, if we got together in one place, everyone watching this today or tonight, whenever it is, and you could fill all the libraries of the world with the things that even collectively we don't know. Okay? We can learn more, but we need to have that attitude where, in understanding that we don't know everything, we are willing to learn and to incorporate those things that prove themselves to be true.
Yeah.
Not just anything, but that prove themselves to be true. And when we have that attitude, and you find people that have that attitude, that's a voice of reason.
That's
And
also a strong community.
mhm. Yeah.
You know? And, you know, from what I understand, you're building that under your Patreon, if I'm not too bad off.
Yes, actually, we are. It's in the I sort of named the different tiers of Patreon, and it's not a money grab. It's something to help with the video files that I put out, because video files, if you know anything about them, they're huge.
Yeah. They take a
And,
lot.
considering the fact that you couldn't buy a bottle of pop in the US with a Canadian dollar right now, um, it costs an awful lot because all my expenses are in US dollars to house the videos and all of the different productions that we put up there. And so there's a little offering that's made on Patreon in order to help with that. But those that are on the highest level, I call them the berserker level, and it's really not that much. It works out to $10. But the thing is they get to be a part of what's called the Fellowship of Magic. And it's not an order, it's a group where we all learn from one another. And it's a matter of acting in mutual respect, realizing that we're all on this same, the way I used to say it, all in the same boat together. And so we work together to sail that boat. We work together to learn from one another. And, I offer things that I have from my experience. And then, of course, they take that and they do something with it. And then they can share something about what they've done. It's kind of, nobody's got any place to stick their nose up in the air. I am the grand poobah. No, that's not how it works. It's fellowship.
Right.
And, as long as you have respect for the other members, that's all fine. It doesn't matter whether it's the Northern tradition or Voodoo, or whether it's Kripoth, or whatever type of tradition that you want to work with, if any. Maybe it's totally modern, Aramonic, whatever. That's not modern, but I'm just throwing more things out there as they come to mind. It's okay, because what I try to share is the transcendental principles that you can apply to anything. And then you study what you're going to study and apply those principles and tell me if it works.
Yeah.
And guess what? It does. And that's what we do there on Patreon more than anything else.
Oh, yeah. We were talking before we started making this, and I had a thought earlier today when I was thinking about when I was going to sit here and talk with you, because like I'll go like days, coming up with like some kind of an idea or design, or any kind of thing that would connect with any kind of conversation I could actually have with another practitioner slash YouTuber slash whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at it in a whole nother light. Okay, so I started this channel, the Black Tower, and it's all about the Simon Necronomicon. Here's the thing. I'm a sorcerer. I have a lot of practices I do that have nothing at all to do with Simon Necronomicon. Now, I can tie them in, and they're kind of what builds up who and what I am, so that when I do the work or I do those rituals or those rites or work in that system or that current, it enriches it even more. And I noticed that you started off with the rune thing, but I did. Here's the question: do you have people who look at you more like, oh, he's only going to tell us about the runes, Your knowledge. I've always wondered that. Do you have problems with that? Like people misunderstand that you're like a wellspring of a lot of different stuff, not just one thing.
I think that a lot of people do think that I'm just the rune guy, because it was quite a few years that we did the NRR, and at the same time, don't when I'm saying this, if you happen to be watching and do practice the Northern tradition, I have great respect for the runes. In fact, I think out of all the systems, it's one of the dearest ones to my heart because they're the ones that spoke to me first, back even when I was 4 years old. And so that has a tremendous impact in my life, and I use those to this day. However, I went through many different studies and practices and over 30 years of practice. I did study ceremonial magic. I did study the Aramanic mysteries and practice them too. I did study and practice the Enochian hierarchies. And yes, I did learn how to use the cacodemons. Okay, people have asked me that every time they hear the word Enochian. Um, and of course, the mysteries to do with Tiamat and Kingu and how that relates to the Sumerian Chaldean mythologies. More or less a little bit different than the direction that, say, the Simon Necronomicon took, but, as it would have gone through the Middle East and had an influence on the Qliphoth. And, you know, I've dealt with the spirits and called spirits from all of those different systems. And, you know, I have found transcendental, and by that I mean applicable anywhere, principles throughout these systems that if you don't get tied down to the method, you realize actually is to produce the same levels of consciousness, the same focus, the same expression, no matter what you're doing. And when I began to see these things, stuff began to really shift in my own life and in my own practice. And, I realized, you know what? And maybe some people really hate this. You really don't need a system to practice magic. But you need to know the discipline of a system in order to be able to realize that you don't need a system. It's kind of like, you get to know the principles of how it works. And then, if you're in a bind and you don't have the ability to go and do a big fancy ritual somewhere, you can still do magic just as effectively with what comes out of your own heart. Because guess what? If you're naked in a hole in the ground, you may not have access to an athame and a temple altar. But you might need magic more than you do when you're in that temple with your altar, because you're in an urgent situation. So understanding how these transcendental principles work, that's powerful. And it's something that I've really felt impressed upon in my own innermost being to share with people. And that's why this book that I've been writing for the last 2.5 years, I had to actually tear it up and redo it and add another 200 pages to it. And it's coming out at the end of January or the end of February. It depends how long the publisher takes to get it going, but it's called Transcendental Keys to Power. And it's going to be going through what I learned with this. And it's remarkable, not because I'm anything, but because of the fact that the knowledge is real and its effectiveness is proven. And it's something that I think will be, again, a help to get people out of the detrimental two camps that we were talking about with awakening into the part where it actually is benefiting them. And, having those understandings, because I have no doubt in my mind that should everything still be turning with the world in 1,000 years, they'll have systems of magic that we never thought, even in our wildest imaginations, would exist. and they'd probably be saying, oh, what strange practices that they have back in 2018. Uh, looking at them through a scholar's eyes, trying to figure out what we were doing. And, it'll be just as effective with what they're doing then as what we're doing now, and was what other people 1,000 years before now did. Because the principles don't change, even if the methods do.
I like that. And I can't wait till your book comes out because I am so getting that book. Because, just a little bit I've talked to you about, a little bit I've listened to, stuff like that. I think it's always good, and I endorse this on my channel. It is always important to remember the basics. And thanks to people like you and the work that you do, and because this book you're coming out with, I have a really weird feeling that it's going to be like it's like one of my fellow brothers at the Black Tower. Uh, he put out like 4 books on magical mechanics and so forth and so on. But these are all books and systems based on basics. It's about the right mentality. So forth and so on. Where does this power come from? How do you tap into it? How do you constructively work with it? And so I am sincerely looking forward to this because I would really love to read your take on all of this. And I think it's funny that you said you've been, 2.5 years working on this. I got about 2 years in the book I'm trying to write, and just recently, a couple months back, my computer crashed. I ended up having to buy a new one, and
Mm-hmm.
lost my book. And thanks to my email having like a rough draft, I was able to go back at it. Well, now I look at it and I'm like, holy crap, I got to rewrite the whole thing because it was from like 2 years ago, so like it didn't fit right. So I get that, but hopefully yours stays on track and gets released, within a time frame there, so that we can get it. And as soon as it is, I'm definitely going to be, posting that everywhere I can think of, so that sending traffic your way because I like your outlook. Uh, it's just really cool to meet you and to have you on here, man. It really is. You know,
Well, it's an honor to be here, and thank you, by the way. I appreciate that. And yeah, I'm looking forward to finally being done with this book too, because yeah, I look at the thing. I don't want to look at this anymore. I gotta go through and realize that voice recognition, which I use more than typing, sometimes spells the wrong words correctly. And I've noticed how many times it did that if I've been in the editing phase.
wow. And you're like, that's not what I was saying. What?
No, you know.
Uh, one last thought, if I can get you to stay just a few minutes longer. Uh, like for example, I use the term sorcerer. The sorcerer, all these different titles, they have different, meanings, and people think different things about different things. But to me, a sorcerer was somebody who, despite what they had to work with, used what they had and made it work. A sorcerer also incorporates mind, body, and spirit
Mhm.
into it to make it stronger. Do you have anything like that you use for yourself? Like it might just be something that you as Dan, just in your own normal day to day life work. Do you have anything like that?
Well, of course, I do call myself a sorcerer, but I don't do that when I'm on the YouTube channel because there's a lot of people that watch that. More than 40 some odd percent of the people that watch my videos aren't even subscribed to the channel. And I know that there's a lot of people from the public that maybe have seen that come up and they go there and they don't know what a sorcerer is except something they saw in a Hollywood movie or whatever. So I'll say, I'm an occultist.
Yeah.
Because really, when you think about it, occult means secret or mystery. An occultist is somebody who seeks mystery. And and so I just say I'm an occultist. And if you're in a situation where I'm working with you, I'll say I'm a sorcerer. And of course, I don't use the name that I have in public
Yeah.
either. But
Okay.
um, the thing is I try to make things on the channel as open for anybody to be able to watch as possible, and then more direct if I'm dealing with you in person. Like my Patreons know I'm the sorcerer because that's what I do, and I'm teaching them magic in a very direct way. So it's kind of a different story there.
Oh yeah. Well, brother, is there anything you would care to say or anything to close us out? I mean,
Well, I want to say, first of all, thank you again for having me on. I appreciate that, Waylon. And also, for those of you that are watching this interview, I hope that you give a subscribe to Waylon's channel there, because this man has the spirit of truth. And by that, I'm not saying something Christian here. I'm saying there is a spirit of truth. Call it the spirit of Ma'at. If you go into Egyptian mythology, call it anything you want. But there is something there that is genuine and true. And so when you're listening to what Waylon has to say, it's valuable. And I hope you share that channel around. And I want to just say, too, that it's a real refreshing experience for me to be able to sit here and have a chat with somebody, as casual as this is, that has a like mind. And, sometimes it's been hard to find people, many times it's been hard to find people that have the same type of vision. And I've sensed that in talking with you, that our vision is not that far different. And that's really encouraging. And I'm very thankful for the opportunity that I've had to talk with you.
well, man, I appreciate it. I'm not gonna lie, I don't really know what to say. Dude, I like that. I'm honored by that. Thank you very much. Uh, to all my viewers out there, this is Dan Updike from the Damned Podcast. He's easy to find on YouTube. Just type in the Damned Podcast. And I'll also be putting links down to where you can find him on Facebook, on Patreon, and on YouTube. For any of you who would be interested in it, he has a wide range of videos that he does and a wide range of workings and so forth and so on. And I think that you don't necessarily have to be into runes to like this man. This man's knowledge just far expands beyond that. And so just give him a chance. Go to his website, go to his YouTube channel, check him out, see for yourself. Be your own judge, let your own light guide you. That being said and done, Dan, thank you very much for being here, brother. And to all of you out there, peace, blessings, and power. Till next time.